The Chicago Bulls reportedly has emerged as a candidate to trade for Bennedict Mathurin. We're going to talk about that, talk about his value, talk about what he will bring to the Chicago Bulls and what a trade will potentially look like. And then Charles Barkley is the latest talking head to jump on the Caleb Wilson train. We're going to talk about that, but I'm also going to send out a reminder that while Caleb Wilson is on his way to being really, really good, do not forget about Matas Buzelis. But before we talk about it and break it all down, you already know you gotta hear the music first. Cognac, gang. Shy Boys podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down for today's daily episode. So if you're tuned in, like what you're listening to today, support the channel in the easiest way possible, simply by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, man. Don't freeload. It's a simple two-step process. Like, subscribe, man. Easiest way to support the channel. But hey, let's get into the content. So now, according to Mark Stein, on his Substack, the Stein line, he talked about restricted free agent Bennedict Mathurin, or is it Mathurin? Sorry, young fella, my bad. But I'm gonna call you Ben today. I'm gonna call you Ben today. So excuse me on that, y'all. But if we all know, Ben got his start at the Indiana Pacers and last year was traded to the Los Angeles Clippers. At just 24 years old, he's a solid player that I think that the Chicago Bulls should be interested. And while that belief is present for me, Mark Steinlein also mentioned that the Chicago Bulls or Ben is drawing some interest from the Chicago Bulls alongside the Pelicans. So I think that is very, very interesting to say the least. When we look at Ben, I think he's a really solid player who will come in for the Chicago Bulls and play on the bench. And one reason I really, really like this is because he's a young player with experience. That kind of made me twitch. I'm not going to lie to y'all because I heard young players with experience from some guy who no longer deserves to be in the state of Illinois, yet alone the city of Chicago. Y'all know who I'm talking about. But this is a young player with experience who has had some really solid moments, not only throughout the regular season, but also on the Indiana Pacers run to the finals in which they lost against the Oklahoma City Thunder. One of those games that comes to mind in doing a little bit of research is the 19 points in the second round versus the Cleveland Cavaliers that he put up off the bench, and he shot 60% from the field and helped the Indiana Pacers go up 2-0 in that series. And after giving a good performance in game 2, came right back in game 3 and put up 23 points. You know what I'm saying? So that was a really solid moment, or a good moment from Ben that we've seen throughout his time in the NBA. And also, I think that him having that experience of experiencing, for the lack of a better word, the finals and seeing what is required of him to be out there and be in that situation, that bodes well for a young Chicago Bulls team who is still young, who still has some veterans, in Zach Collins, and you have a Norman Powell that's around now. But now having a young guy that probably can connect, on the same level as some of our young guys, they're going to be able to see like, hey, what is some of the requirements, or what is something I can take from you that I can add to myself, alongside some of those conversations that are going to be had from Norman Powell, Nick Claxton, and how not to be bad in New York with the Nets. So there's going to be a lot of things that they can, take away from Ben, in my personal opinion. Now, when it comes to a situation, this offseason, the Los Angeles Clippers, they did issue a qualifying offer on Ben, and that was at $8.77 million. And right now, they've been in some talk, to see if he can remain on a team or if they're going to entertain some type of sign and trade type of situation. And right now, I looked on Spot Rack and I've been searching the web, and there are many people that believes that currently, if a sign and trade was to happen, Ben's value is currently sitting around $20 million per season. For a guy like that throughout his career, who has averaged, well around anywhere from 14 points at the low mark to 17 points, I think that's pretty damn solid. At least you know that he's going to be productive. And I think that that is something that can help the Chicago Bulls, who, though we know that you're going to get a little bit of something out of Trey Jones off the bench, you're going to get something out of Leonard Miller off the bench. We still have questions on if the Chicago Bulls have enough scoring and spacing on this team. Now, I'm not saying that Ben is going to be one of those great spacers added to the team from the three-point line, but there are some things that we could positively say about Ben. Last year with the Indiana Pacers, averaged 17 points per game, 5 rebounds, shot 43% from the field and 37% from the three. Now, here's the catch. He did not shoot the three ball so well in Los Angeles, but he still averaged those 17 points and still shot 42% from the field. So we know that the guy can bring something to the Chicago Bulls. Now, what exactly will he be bringing? I think he can bring another scorer off the bench, a guy that has a quick first step and can get to the rim, draw some contact, and get to the foul line where he's shooting at 88% per game. And then maybe with a little bit of confidence building and some corrections or whatever, maybe he can get back to that high volume of shooting from the 3-point line at just 37%. And I think that at 6'5", he's going to be on the line of having the quote unquote slap, you know what I'm saying? Because not only will he have the size at his position, he's going to have the length and the athleticism and the physicality to bring to the Chicago Bulls, in which we're still trying to figure out on this Chicago Bulls team, because on paper, though we know, or at least believe, we have some really good parts, we still understand that we can do a little bit more of growing. And having him at 24 years old, experiencing some playoff runs, being under the tutelage of a really good coach in Rick Carlisle, that stuff can help this young team, and he can grow, and he fits the timeline at just 24 years old. It's all going to come down to what that contract looks like. So we know what he's going to bring or potentially bring to the Chicago Bulls, but that's offensively. Now, defensively, you'll get some moments here and there to where he's lining up really, really well in defense. Wouldn't say that he's one of the greater ones, but I believe that he is solid enough to kind of just help the Chicago Bulls on the defensive side of the ball, to where we know that those guys have their mind set up. And I'm talking about the coaching staff here. They have the belief that you got to play defense if you want to get some minutes. So I think that's important to note right there. Now, what would a trade look like? There's one trade floating around social media right now, basically saying, hey, the Chicago Bulls can send Isaac Okoro to LA, who makes a little bit over $11 million per year, plus some second round picks in exchange for Ben. So I think that's solid. I think that's a deal that you could potentially make. Now, while Ben is the better offensive player, I don't think he's the same on defense as a Isaac Okoro. But I don't think that will be a major problem for a Chicago Bulls team who has a really nicely built out team as far as athleticism and length. You're talking about who, if he can end up on a court with the Caleb Wilson, or end up on a court with the Matas Buzelis, a Patrick Williams, a Leonard Miller, a Jalen Smith, all that length and athleticism that can help, you know what I'm saying, Ben come in and infuse himself to play some really solid, maybe not great, but some solid defense against the opposing team. And then there could be another situation. I was trying to fire up the trade machine, but I guess the gears wasn't rolling. If he goes out there and, let's just say, signs for a $20 million deal, I couldn't go and execute the trade or attempt to execute the trade because the trade machine, I guess a couple gears were, a little rusty. I ain't gonna lie. But What about Isaac Okoro and including Rob Dillingham along with those second round picks just to move them? And the reason I included Rob Dillingham in there, I believe, is making around $6 million. So you add that 6 with the 11 for 17, and then you'll still be a little bit off. I wonder if that's in the range of being an acceptable trade, but again, couldn't execute the trade. But the reason I included Rob is because the uncertainty surrounding Rob Dillingham, at least from the outside looking in. I know I'm one of the minority. I'm in the minority of wanting to see what Rob Dillingham can provide to the Chicago Bulls this season. But there's a number in the majority that believes Rob Dillingham has no place, at least amongst the fan base. We don't know how the coaching staff feel about him. We don't know how the shot caller and Bryson Graham feels about him. So if there was ever a situation, maybe those two players, along with a couple second round picks, could garner you a Bennedict Mathurin. So it's just something I wanted to explore, something that I wanted to try to figure out. But I think if this is on the table for the Chicago Bulls, and if you have to move off a Isaac Okoro, we'll just leave it at that. I think that'll be a really good deal for the Chicago Bulls ultimately. But let me know how you feel about it down below. Now, before we get up out of here, we got to talk about why you shouldn't forget about Matas Buzelis this season and moving forward. Now, follow me. The reason I'm getting ready to speak on Matas Buzelis and why people shouldn't forget about him is because Charles Barkley has and is on, focusing and giving a lot of praise to Caleb Wilson. And I'm happy for the kid. And I believe he's going to be really, really good for the Chicago Bulls. But Charles Barkley had this to say, and I know it's going to get a lot of Bulls fans hyped up, even though sometimes Charles can get on our damn nerves. But Charles Barkley said, I think the Chicago Bulls got the best rookie in the NBA. When I was talking to coaches and general managers, they are like, who would you take with the number one pick? I said Caleb Wilson. They are like, what do you mean? I said, I like AJ. I like Peterson. There was no player I would have taken before Caleb Wilson. Not one. Peterson and DeBanza are probably better scorers at this stage, but he can learn how to shoot. Let me tell you something. From an athletic point, he can guard 1, 2, 3, 4. Ain't nobody more talented than Caleb Wilson, period. End quote from Charles. And I like that. But I gotta remind people to not forget about Matas Buzelis. Because while Charles Barkley is singing his praises, while there are a number of writers and NBA analysts giving Caleb Wilson his praise and having him being one of the guys to give the others drafted in the top 4 a run for their money for the Rookie of the Year award. It's all great. I hope he's in that conversation, but this is a team thing. I want him to excel, but this is a team game. So I want to remind people, while we are excited, we don't want to take nothing from Caleb Wilson. Absolutely not. We don't. But let's make sure, and this is what I'm hoping, that while we are placing emphasis on the development of Caleb Wilson, I hope we place the same emphasis on Matas Buzelis. Because if these two guys move at the rate that we believe they're going to be moving in within the next few seasons, the Chicago Bulls can have a crazy duo on their hands. Like, for the sake of discussion, a couple years ago, even last year, when you looked at Boston, when you mentioned Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, you mentioned the opposite player. When you talk about the Orlando Magic, you don't just say Paolo, you say Paolo in France. So when people talk about the Chicago Bulls this upcoming season and next year, I want those same people to be saying Caleb Wilson and Matas Buzelis, because I think as they can be better together than not, at least until we see the basketball. And I think that it's very, very important that while these guys are new to the Chicago Bulls and Swain and Caleb Wilson is obviously going to receive a lot of attention, I'm hoping that the coaching staff, the front office, is not forgetting about Matas Buzelis and his potential and try to figure out ways to unlock him to where then we have two cornerstone pieces and then still have a good supporting cast to move through this NBA. Because I don't think there's too many situations down the line where we're going to see three crazy superstars making a crazy amount of money with the second apron in place. And I think that there's going to have to be some actual team building involved from all front offices. There's going to have to be some creativity. There's going to have to be some smartness in the room to get things done and to stay ahead of what's to come. When you look at the New York Knicks, there was a major sacrifice that had to occur over there with Jalen Brunson for them to build out and get OG and get Mikal Bridges and whatnot. But the same thing remains the same. It's two stars over there in Cat and Brunson. And now we looking at the San Antonio Spurs on the flip side, right? They looking like they primed. But what did Wemby just do? Had to take a little less money to keep that in place. But if you go out there and you say, hey, we rocking with you, but both of us gonna take the max money, and I'm not trying to tell people to take more or less, you get a situation where you make some tough decisions and have to move off Jaylen Brown. At least that's what the front office told us. So I want these two guys to be around for a very long time. Matas Buzelis has that athleticism. He has that work ethic. He can go out there and be a part of the block party, or AKA the Fifi. He absolutely can. So I just want everybody to go out there, and while we praising Caleb Wilson and have that belief in him, let's have some belief in Matas Buzelis as well, because he's an important piece to putting this puzzle together. We got some pieces. We got to go find the couple of lost pieces to the puzzle. But once it all comes together, I'm hoping that Matas Buzelis is a part of it just as much as Caleb Wilson. And we'll see what happens, because I think it's better for the city. It's better for the team if they can have a nice center in the future. You know what I'm saying? And then have these two guys being crazy good, being all-stars, you know what I'm saying, and being in that different light. But don't forget about Matas Buzelis. Sing them praises to Caleb Wilson and get ready to sing some praises for Matas Buzelis. But hey, that is it for me, y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to another episode. Before you get up out of here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well, man. We appreciate y'all. Make sure you always see red. Y'all already know we're going to catch y'all on the next one for sure. Peace. Cognac. Gang.